Good afternoon and welcome to another Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I am your host, Michael Kernodle, and I'm delighted to have one of my great friends and master educators, Austin Vickrey. And the topic today is instrument doubling for saxophone. And you know what? Even if you're not a saxophonist, you can come in and you can learn some great, valuable information from this master teacher. So I want to just invite you in, all our people that's listening live. If you have any questions or any comments, just go into that chat feature down there and type in your question, and we'll leave some time at the end of the session to answer any of them. And you know what? This wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. So please be sure to check out the studio archives of our past video sessions at clearwaterjazz.com's education outreach section. And that's brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as our Young Lions podcast available wherever you stream. That's brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. So just search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. Austin is no visitor to Clearwater Jazz Holiday. He is an awesome arranger, woodwind specialist, and I say specialist because he plays them all. He was born and raised in Utah, and he has his degree from his bachelor's of music and saxophone performance from the University of Utah, and that was in 2000, and his master's of music and jazz studies from the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. And I'm pretty sure you've seen him all over Tampa Bay playing in many productions and on many stages. I mean, he's also the adjunct woodwind instructor at Johns Hopkins Middle School in St. Petersburg. So I'm going to get out the way because I know you're excited about hearing more. And don't forget, you can check out his music. You can go to austinvickrey.com. But without any further delay, Austin Vickrey, the stage is all yours.
Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate that introduction. And thank you again to the folks at Clearwater Jazz Holiday for sponsoring this. It's always a pleasure to do these sessions for you guys. So I hope some folks can get a little bit out of it. And I'd just like to share my experiences. So today we're going to talk about instrument doubling, which is something as a saxophone player is necessary, in my opinion. If you play saxophone and you're planning on continuing, whether it's in a big band or in college, even if you're not going to do music full time as a job, as a means to make money, or if you're doing it on the side, you want to do projects. Some situations may call for you to play another instrument other than your primary instrument. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I have discovered this throughout my career and have taken on the task of learning quite a few doubles. And it's a very positive thing because as a working musician as well, I get to do a lot of work. And we're going to talk about the advantages of learning your doubles. So I run into a lot of young saxophone players that don't have doubles yet. And I'm like, man, better work on those doubles because you never know, even if you just play one saxophone, you probably are going to have to learn at least one other double, probably two. And that's just the way it is. If you want to work, if you want to do gigs, if you want to do shows, musicals, especially, or if, you want to take on a different project, or, you can record stuff yourself. You learn all these doubles and people are laying down their own tracks and layering and whatnot. You can do a lot. So I highly encourage saxophone players to learn their doubles. So what's doubling mean? Doubling means playing another instrument other than your primary instrument. So a lot of saxophone players I know started on saxophone like me. I started on saxophone when I was in 6th grade at 11 years old. And that was my first instrument. And then I learned to pick up the other ones like flute, clarinet, and all the other saxophones as I got older and had more education. But some saxophone players start on clarinet. So there's a natural double there. And then a lot of teachers will say, hey, start on clarinet first. let's get you going there. There's a lot of schools and programs that will do that first. And then let's see how you go for a year or two. And then if you feel like you want to play saxophone, then they'll switch you over to a saxophone that you want to play. But I'm going to talk about doubles as an approach from a saxophone player point of view. So I'm going to assume that anybody who is learning doubles is playing saxophone for the purpose of this session. Now, I always have like a PDF/keynote presentation that I do with this. So I'm going to share my screen and pull that up. And this will be available as a PDF for anyone to view on the Clearwater Jazz Holiday website. That's clearwaterjazz.com/education. And you can scroll down to the section where it's got all of the sessions, and it should be there. They usually put it up pretty quick. So look for it there if you're missing a session or watching this on a replay. All right, let's see. I got to hit share screen. Let's do that. And then there we go. And let's do full screen with this and we'll get going. All right. Here we are. So instrument doubling for saxophone players created for Clearwater Jazz Holiday Jazz Master Virtual Sessions by me. Let's keep going. Why is doubling important? That's the first question or the first topic here. If you play in a jazz ensemble or a big band, doubles are sometimes required in your part if you're in the saxophone section. Saxophone section is typically the section that doubles the most. There can be some other doubles for brass instruments, I think. I'm not sure. There are very few. Saxophone players tend to have a wider range of doubles. Now, if you're a percussion player, then you got all the things to learn. There's so much. That's the biggest range. But we're woodwind players for this session. So let's keep going. As a working musician or a gigging musician, if you will be able to take on more work the more versatile you are, or the more versatile you present yourself. So the more stuff you have, the more hireable you are. And that's the advantage to being able to double on other instruments. You know, I get a phone call that says, hey, I need somebody to play in this group, pays $300, but I need someone on alto sax, clarinet, and flute. Can you do it? And I'll say, yes, I can. One of my band directors said, I can't remember if it was, I think it was either my band director or my private teacher that said, you want to be the yes man. If somebody gives you a call and they tell you the gig, you want to say yes, or you want to be able to say yes, meaning that, yes, I can do that. Now, if the gig's worth it or not to you, that's a different story. But just being able to say, yeah, I can do that. You know, if you're looking for work, that's a great advantage. Now, most woodwind books for musicals and shows require at least 2 to 3 doubles, because not always is a pit orchestra an actual orchestra. It's usually a condensed orchestra in the sense that it's very, very small. And a lot of wind players and or brass players will need to double up on their parts. So a typical woodwind part for say like a musical like Guys and Dolls. I played Guys and Dolls. They'll separate the books into Woodwind 1, Woodwind 2, Woodwind 3, Woodwind 4, depending on how many parts there are. And each of those books will have you picking up doubles, sometimes 2 or 3 times in the same song. So if you want to be able to get, and those shows usually pay really well. If you do like a 2 or 3 week stint, or if you have aspirations of being on Broadway as a studio musician or working musician, for those things, you want to get your doubles down quite well. And I know one of the masters here in Pinellas County is David Tagliarini. That guy is the woodwind doubling master. Believe me, he can play them all, and he can play them all well. So he's the example here in the county for sure, in my opinion. Now, also as a teacher, if you're a teacher, you can learn enough on your doubles to teach lessons to beginning, intermediate, or advanced students, depending on how much you practice and how well you get on them. So, you know, not only can you teach lessons on saxophone, but, you know, for me, I teach lessons on clarinet. I teach lessons on flute. I've taught lessons on oboe. We'll talk about oboe. I've taught beginning lessons on trumpet, believe it or not. I'm not a stellar trumpet player, but I can make a sound and play at a fairly middle school level, enough to get kids to get started. And that's important, you know, even if you can only do a few lessons here and there. And as long as you're setting a good example for posture, tone, embouchure, all those things, and you're one step ahead of the student, that's the trick. You have to be one step ahead. As long as you're one step ahead of what they can do, you can teach them. So there's that. I've even taught percussion lessons, very beginning percussion lessons, and I'm not good at percussion at all. Very, very, very mediocre. But that's just the thing. The more you can do instrumentally, the more hireable you are, especially for educators and teachers nowadays. Being able to relate to the students and communicate what they need and show them what they need is very crucial to their development. Also, playing doubles can be fun. Sometimes it can be painful, but most of the time it's fun. I say painful in a joking sense. When I take a look at maybe a part that's in a musical and go, oh man, that's a little tricky. But once you learn the basics, you know, doubling can be very fun to do. All right, so let's move forward. Let's talk about the common doubles that saxophone players have. And I'm going to talk about this in terms of what primary saxophone you might play or one might play. Let's start with alto sax. That's the most common saxophone to start on if you're starting a saxophone because of its size, its use in a concert band or jazz band. It's very accessible to young kids. It's also accessible to kids who might not have gotten their growth spurt yet, and they want to jump in their middle school and that growth spurt hasn't hit yet. It's easier to handle than, say, starting them on a tenor sax or a baritone sax. Alto sax is the standard starting point. That, or you start on clarinet and then move to one of the saxes. Excuse me. But if you're starting on alto sax, the most common doubles are going to be clarinet, flute / piccolo, and soprano saxophone for those big band ones like Thad Jones, Mel Lewis. Sometimes we'll have a lead alto sax that has to play soprano for those parts. Oboe is also one that can be a double. Mostly I find use for that in musicals or shows of some sort where you have to play a special little line on that oboe, some kind of a solo line that's really pretty and sticks out. We'll talk about oboe in a little bit. If your primary instrument is tenor sax, the common doubles are also clarinet, flute, and soprano saxophone. Bassoon, mostly, I put bassoon in the tenor part because I have seen a bassoon on a double for like a woodwind 3 part that has tenor sax, like for a brief moment. And we'll talk about bassoon a little bit later. Now, baritone sax is an interesting one. I put that in there because a lot of sometimes students come in later and a band director might start them on a baritone sax. And maybe they've played alto and tenor and they're moving to baritone sax, and that's going to be their primary instrument, which I know several baritone saxophonists who that's their primary instrument. Clarinet for sure, flute for sure, bass clarinet. Bass clarinet, we'll talk a little bit about bass clarinet, is a double if you play baritone sax, or if you're playing baritone sax chair, watch out for that random bass clarinet part because it can happen. Also, alto sax is a common double, alto and baritone, because they're in the same key and they have the same fingerings. So that's a very easy switch to make for the most part, with the exception of a couple of things. But I have played like a Duke Ellington chart where the baritone sax part actually had an alto part in it as well. So that's a common double in that respect. I've put an asterisk here. Learning another saxophone technically isn't considered doubling because it's in the same family-ish, the saxophone family. I mean, we're talking about the umbrella of woodwind family. So saxophones, I would consider kind of their own little group, right? They're still woodwinds, but they're their own thing. Clarinets, there's a whole family of clarinets. There's, regular clarinet, E-flat clarinet, bass clarinet, contrabass clarinet. There's a clarinet in A. I mean, there's lots of different clarinets. So they're their own little family. And then you got the flutes family there too. Flute and piccolo and alto flute and bass flute. I won't talk about the flute family too much this time, just flute. I think that's enough to start with. If you want to explore the other ones, you can. But learning to play more than one type of saxophone usually comes with the territory of being a saxophone player in general. For me, I play all four, and that just was my path. I started on alto, and that was my primary, and I didn't want to learn anything else until I auditioned for college in a college band studying music. And they said, hey, we already have a lead alto player. So we're going to stick you on tenor sax too. Do you play tenor? And I said, no. So well, we got a horn you can play. So I had to play tenor saxophone until that alto chair freed up so I could play my alto. So that was the beginning of the doubles for me in college. Then eventually I had to get flute, clarinet, and ended up getting a baritone saxophone in my graduate school, my graduate studies. I took to it so well in the big band. That was my first spot in the big band, was the Barry Sax chair. Again, they already had a lead alto, and played baritone, and I started getting hired on it. So I was using the school's baritone, and I was like, man, I got to get one. And that's how it happens. That's how it at least that's how it happened for me. All right, let's move on. We're going to start with clarinet. So some saxophone players begin on clarinet before moving to saxophone, and this is usually encouraged. If saxophone was your first instrument, clarinet should be the first double you learn, in my opinion. It's very relative to the alto. I'm going to talk about some aspects of the clarinet and talk about an approach to getting used to it as a saxophone player. I'm going to say find a used clarinet to learn on first, I believe, is probably your best bet, because you're going to want to take some time to develop a sound, get used to the fingerings before you start accepting jobs and gigging. Everybody's different on how fast they learn and how quickly. So, keep that in mind. But my recommendation is to find something, used to learn on first, if it's playable. Some affordable brands that you can find used that won't sacrifice quality. Yamaha is a good brand. I love Yamaha instruments. They're usually really sturdy, especially their student and intermediate models for big beginners, and fairly affordable. Buffet is a very good clarinet brand. Selmer, also a leading brand in woodwind instrument production. P. Mariette makes a decent saxophone and also a decent clarinet. LeBlanc is one of the higher end brands. So if you can afford money on the LeBlanc, like an R13, I would love that. But I don't have that. Jean Paul is a interesting brand that I recently discovered teaching at the middle school. Very, very affordable instruments and decent quality for the money. Like you can't really get much better. The instrument owner came by when I was a band director and showed us some of these instruments. We got to do a little he did a little clinic on them, and I was super, super impressed. They're very, very affordable. We have some at Johns Hopkins for our kids, and they work really, really well. All right. Approaching the clarinet. Now, I'm not sure if you guys can see. I'm going to exit out of that. Can you still see my screen? Like, can you see my face? Can I do demonstrations?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we're all good.
Even if it says full screen, I can do that? If I share my screen with full screen?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
You're all good.
All right, I just wanted to double check because I'm not looking at myself. So I wanted to make sure. Okay, cool. So let's go back to that. All right, I'm going to keep my picture up so you can see. So approaching the clarinet. I've got my clarinet with me here. The clarinet I'm using today is a Yamaha Allegro clarinet. I love this clarinet. My backup was my primary before I got this one, and it was a Selmer Omega. And it was an okay clarinet to get me through stuff, and I still have it as like a backup, but I really do like this Yamaha Allegro. It might even be a model lower than the Selmer, and I prefer how it feels. I prefer how it sounds. It's a really nice clarinet. So anyway, the embouchure. Embouchure is different for clarinet than saxophone in that it must be more firm and more stable. In saxophone, we tend to kind of keep a looser or a more loose embouchure in order to bend pitch and to do all the inflections that we want to do. When you take an approach to playing clarinet, depending on the style, you have to keep your embouchure a lot more rigid and a lot more firm. Corners of the mouth hold really far back and very nice and firm. I don't like to say tight because sometimes tight implies tenseness, and we don't want to be tense when we play. Tenseness alters the pitch. It makes things awkward. It can cause pain. We don't want those things. That's going to interfere with our playing and our sound. So I like to say firm. Want to make sure that it's firm. So just a sample, if you can see my embouchure, I pull this back over my teeth even more than I do with my alto or my saxophone. And again, it's the same apparatus. You put there's the reed and top teeth on the mouthpiece. I think you guys know that. And then the angle is really important too. With clarinet, the angle can't be too shallow or the tone isn't going to be good. Okay, and I'm kind of exaggerating there. The angle needs to be just below 45 degrees when you play clarinet. Not 45, but just below. I like to say, students put the clarinet between your knees and then pull it out between your knees when you're sitting at a proper, sitting with the proper position. Posture, thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Posture. And then you get a better sound. So working on a good sound is the most important thing when you're learning your doubles. You want to have a good sound. When you want to have a good sound anyway, but that should be your primary goal. When you're starting on clarinet from saxophone reeds, you don't have to start on the softer reeds like you would if you were just barely beginning a reed instrument, period. Try playing on a 2.5 or a 3 to start. I always put my kids on a 2.5 first. That typically allows them to play the sound without too much effort and force. But I play on either a 2.5 or a 3, depending on the reed brand. Van Doren's a good reed brand. I used to use Mitchell-Lurie's for a while. Can't even remember what I'm using here. Might be a Van Doren or even Rico's. I'm not a big reed snob. Some players are. That's just how I roll. Like if it's a reed and it can make a good sound, I really don't care what the brand is. But that's a personal thing. Some people are very loyal to their brands of reeds. But yeah, there you go. Fingerings. So with clarinet and saxophone, the fingerings are similar, but we're going to go over it. Usually the trickiest part of learning the clarinet are the fingerings because they're different from saxophone in a few different ways. And I put parentheses, the break. We're going to talk about what that is. To get going on clarinet, I would buy a beginner book for clarinet. A band method book is very helpful, even though it might be, a little young if you're, college age, or if you're starting to learn your doubles in the professional world. If you want something that's less middle school-like, you can use the Rubank method books. I love those method books. It's beginning, intermediate, advanced. I think those books are fantastic, and they still hold really well as far as instruction booklets for instruments, in my opinion. You may improve at a faster rate since you already know some saxophone, so you can go through the book, at a quicker rate. We're only focused on getting a good sound and learning the fingerings. In terms of solo and improvisation on the clarinet, because a lot of saxophone players will do that. Maybe you want to play some of that early jazz stuff on clarinet. Or if you just want to improvise and play jazz clarinet, you can do modern stuff like Eddie Daniels. You can do, older stuff like Barney Bigard, or who was the other clarinet player in Ellington's band? I'm trying to think. It's not Johnny Hodges. Can't remember. Although I think Johnny Hodges did play clarinet. But here are some tips on how I like to approach soloing on clarinet, because it's a little different. The lower range that I've noticed of the clarinet fingerings match the alto saxophone sound and fingerings. They don't match the notes, but they match the same sound. Okay, so I'm talking about written notes like E4, meaning the first line on the treble clef staff, written, and lower. For example, left hand fingering, if I have 3 fingers down, 1, 2, 3, it's my left hand, even though it looks like it's my right in my mirror. Of course, the thumb is down. There's a thumb hole, okay, back here on the clarinet. But if you've got all 3 of these down, okay, and you play that note on clarinet and saxophone, it is concert B flat, so it's the same pitch. So for me, it helps to think in alto saxophone, since that's my reference, that's my first instrument, and it helps me to think about how things sound and fingerings in the alto saxophone key when I play clarinet. You might say that's overthinking it. Sorry, I'm an analytical person, and it helps me. If it doesn't help you, don't do that. But you have to try. But it's a C for clarinet, and it's a G for alto saxophone, but it's the same fingering. So if I keep going down, and I go down to B on clarinet, this is B, these 3 fingers down, and the middle finger here, that's B, but it's F sharp on alto sax, same sound, all the way down till you get down to F on clarinet / C on alto saxophone. So I can improvise in the lower range and feel like I'm playing alto. So it's, and sometimes I will do clarinet solos strictly in the lower range, and I will stay there because it's comfortable, and I can still make it sound good if I'm not like feeling like playing up high. Obviously the goal is to be able to go all throughout the range, but start slowly, don't push yourself too hard, but push yourself. Okay. But again, I tend to think in alto sax key briefly. When I go down, I feel those fingerings. I say think, but I'm not overthinking it. It's more of a feel thing. Number 2 about improvisation with clarinet, the upper range. If we talk about the upper range of the clarinet, the fingerings match the tenor saxophone / soprano saxophone because they are all 3 in the same key, B flat. So written notes C5, which is the 4th space C, in the staff for clarinet and saxophone or tenor. Left hand, 3 fingers down. It matches those fingers from that C up, okay? To a certain point. But left hand, 3 fingers down, again, with the register key pressed in the back, okay, to make it go higher. This note is concert F on both instruments, on clarinet and on tenor / soprano saxophone. So if I stay in the upper register with the register key down, I can think in tenor key or soprano. And there you go. So I got two ranges I can stick to. If I want to stick up high, I can do that. Think in tenor key. If I want to stay down low for a little bit, think in alto key. Now, the trickiest part is the break. Okay, the break on the clarinet. If you haven't heard of this, it's a certain group of notes called the throat tones. Okay, and it's because they're all right here. You have to finger them right here on the instrument, which is the throat of the instrument. Okay, when we play through these notes, the throat tones, we refer to that as going over the break or passing over the break. The break refers to the breaking up of the fingering pattern of the clarinet. Okay, these notes include G, G sharp, A flat, A, and A sharp, B flat in the middle of the staff. Okay, so open hand, G, then G sharp is this little side key right here. And then A is right here. And then B flat, A sharp is this key with this thumb key and not pressing or not covering the thumb hole. So you've got 4 notes that you have to play that break the sequence of bringing your fingers up in a organized fashion. So it can create a bit of a problem and a bit of an issue in terms of improvising or thinking about improvising. At least from my perspective, I had that trouble. Maybe some of you won't have that problem. Some of you can probably take to this like that, and that's great. But this is just a method that I've used. It can make things, I'll go to my second point there, make things a bit tricky when soloing. So my advice is to practice playing through these notes slowly at first. Learning your major scales in 12 keys will also facilitate ease of playing the notes. So learn your scales on your doubles. That's probably the first thing that you should do after you get a good sound. Learn your 12 scales, put forth that effort and check out all the fingerings available. There's a couple of other tricky things on clarinet with your pinky keys. I won't get into, but those are the basics of the breakdown on approach to clarinet: upper, lower range, and the break. Once you get a hold of those, everything else will fall into place. And that's the clarinet, friends. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. If you want to learn some clarinet, I teach lessons. Or find somebody to teach you lessons, whatever. Or, hey, a lot of people learn stuff on the internet now, and there's lots of sources out there. So move forward accordingly. Let's go to the next double. And the main other double is the flute. And I've got a flute here for demonstration purposes. Flute can be a very fun double to play. Learning flute isn't always necessary, but it's very useful to have. Oops, I should have said as a double. It's very useful to have as a double. Find a used flute to learn on. I totally recommend that. Affordable brands that you can look for: Yamaha, Gemeinhardt. My first flute is a Gemeinhardt. I still have it. Pearl is a good brand. Jupiter. Again, Jean Paul. This happens to be a Jean Paul flute. Okay. I'm kind of going between my Jean Paul and my Gemeinhardt right now, but this is a Jean Paul. Very, very affordable and decent instrument. Etude makes a nice flute. Allura, there's so many other ones. I won't get into some of the more expensive ones unless you want to go there. I've got friends. The Haynes was like the granddaddy of flute brands back in the heyday. Everybody wanted a Haynes flute. But if you want to talk to a professional flute player about that stuff, that's probably your best bet. Maybe one of the flute players from the Florida Orchestra could help you. I'm not sure. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So if you're having questions about that, let me know. I'm sure I could find somebody you can get in touch with. All right, let's move on. Flute and saxophone, approaching it from a saxophone point of view, the embouchure. this is the hardest part to learning the flute, is getting a sound, getting a good sound that's clean, pure, has the least amount of extra air. Noise is the priority because it's often we get that breathy tone. Sometimes we want the breathy tone, but when you're first learning, you don't really want to do that. You want to try to create a nice, pure, clean tone. So my recommendation, and this is what I do with all my beginning students, no matter how old they are, is I recommend practicing on the head joint first, just the head joint, just to get a sound. So here's the head joint. We've got the tone hole and the lip plates. You can see on one side, the lip plate goes down further or covers more of the head joint than one side. That's the joint. That's the part that you're going to put against your lower lip. So the way we do this real quick, just a very quick flute lesson. You're going to center the tone hole right here. Center the tone hole over your lip line, the line that is created by upper and lower lips when your lips are closed and relaxed. Okay? That means your jaw is slightly open. When you relax your jaw, your teeth should be apart. Don't clench. Clenching is not good. Okay? Just relax, nice relaxed face position. So I'm going to center that like this. Okay? It's centered. I feel it right in the center. Okay? Then I'm going to roll the lip plate this way, away from me, so that the tone hole is exposed going up this way so you can blow across it. So once again, center, relax, roll, press and roll. Now, depending on your lip size, some people have larger lips on the bottom. Part of your lip might go cover the tone hole a little bit. Part of your lip might not. It just depends, but you have to find what we call the sweet spot. And you're trying to blow across the hole like you would a pop bottle. Okay, so while remaining relaxed and without pursing your lips, because we're not doing this. We don't want to purse our lips. Okay, we want to keep them relaxed. Okay, think of the syllable. I know this is funny, but poo, but not like poo like this, but poo. And blow steady air across. Just nice and relaxed. You can kind of see that my lip is so relaxed up top because that's what's controlling the air direction, that it comes out when I blow. If you watch closely, it's so relaxed that it comes out like this. Okay. Now you might, if you're off, so that's not a good sound. So adjust, like I move this around till I can find that sweet spot. You might have to roll it in and out. You might have to adjust. Okay. I've trimmed the hair right under my lip for gentlemen. You trim the hair right under your lip so that you get the maximum amount of stability against your bottom lip. You've got a lot of hair there. It's less easy to keep stable. I know some people that'll just shave that part completely to do that. All right. Those are the basics of starting to get that sound on the flute. A couple of things you want to be careful of and you want to check out when you're doing flute. Practice this exercise in a mirror. Okay. Practice in a mirror so you can see it. But you also want to be aware of how it feels, because you're going to want to be able to pull that flute up very quickly and go straight to the sweet spot and be able to get that right off the bat instead of search for it. Okay. But using a mirror is going to help you do that. You want to look for the vapor trail that's created on the lip plate right there. Okay. To be in the center. Now, not all flute players play in center. Okay. But this is a good starting point. Your sweet spot might be off center. I know several several flute players, orchestral flute players, but one of the top flute players in the Florida Orchestra, he plays a little off center and at an angle. He doesn't play like parallel to the floor. He says even that playing at an angle is even more, can be more optimal. But again, I'm not the professional on the flute playing embouchure. I stick to kind of where it feels comfortable for me. So, you know, he might be a good one to consult on that, and I can find his name and information if anybody wants that. The second thing while practicing this and just starting on flute is you have to be mindful of your air. If you're blowing too hard and too often, it can make you dizzy and winded, especially when you're starting. I get this experience with beginning flute players all the time, especially at the middle school and high school level. They become very winded, and I myself was winded when I was starting. So just be careful. Don't blow so much that you get dizzy and pass out, because it can happen. If you're getting tired or you're starting to feel strange, take a break. Okay, come back to it later. Okay, but a little bit of practice every day consistently, and you'll get it. You will get it. And again, everybody's lips are different. So some people, you might get the sound right off the bat. Others, it might take you a little bit to form that embouchure and find the sweet spot. Once you start to get a good tone on the head joint, start practicing with the instrument assembled, okay? And we'll do just, I'll just do a little bit of a demonstration on this. Now, again, my doubles, I don't consider myself to be the super strongest doubler, but, you know, we're all our own worst critic, right? But I can get through things, and I've played a couple of, you know, been able to do a couple of jazz heads on flute. It's a little trickier because of the keys and the fingerings, but that's my next point. The flute fingerings are very similar to saxophone fingerings with a few small adjustments. Sometimes when you go up high, you have to do weird combinations of fingers like this, and it looks very strange, and it's a little awkward. Also, that side B flat is gone, okay? Side B flat / E flat on the clarinet, yay, it's there, but you can't do that on the flute. Sorry, no cheater way that way. It's a weird fingering. It's got to be thumb, first finger, and first finger. That's our B flat. There's a secret hidden B flat where if you use one of the thumb keys and your first finger, you can do that. I totally cheat and use that a lot. Okay, listen, you can use any fingering you want as long as you can execute a passage and it sounds good. So I'm not a stickler for that. I do teach fingerings at appropriate times depending on where the student is. But if you're a professional or approaching professional playing status and you're looking to start your doubles, you can kind of work with that on your own and figure out what works best for you. Or I can also recommend, you know, take a few beginning lessons with a professional. Take a couple of private lessons. Have someone guide you a little bit, you know, if you're feeling a little lost. So here's what I like to do. Practice doing lip slurs between notes throughout the instrument's range. This will help you develop control of your embouchure. There is no register key for the flute. Okay, like saxophone and clarinet, we've got a register key or an octave key in the back on our left thumb. We have thumb keys for flute, but those do not control the register, okay? It's all up here. It's all in your lips. It's all in how the aperture is, okay? The aperture is just the hole that's created when you form the embouchure for the flute. So to get up high, you have to adjust. Very small change in your lips to get the upper range. So what I recommend doing is trying to do lip slurs. So I'm going to start with G, high G, and I'm going to go down in range and try to slur to each one and back. I might have cheated a couple of times on that. But do the lip slur thing. It's going to help you get control. If you overblow slightly, you can get the higher register, but it's really just, it's about closing or drawing a little bit more closed the aperture in your lips, the little hole. You can also help by rolling in a little bit, will also help you achieve some of those higher notes. Rolling in means rolling the instrument in towards you a little bit while keeping it close. So you can get those really, really high notes, right? And that's a teeny, teeny, tiny hole in your lips to get the higher notes. The smaller the hole, the higher you can play. Okay, and that just comes with a lot of practice and a lot of patience and a lot of lots of air. Okay. Always strive for as pure of a tone as you can, for a pure of a tone. Oops. Yay, spelling errors. Always strive for as pure of a tone as you can. Okay. Try to avoid the breathiness for now. You can create that later as a special technique if you want, but depending on what calls for it, depending on the ensemble that you're in. But yeah, there's the flute. Here's some other tips on approaching the flute. Some flutes are open hole. Okay, that means that on these keys, you can see these keys. If you look closely, there's little tiny circles inside of them. A lot of times these will be hollowed out. That's what they mean by open hole, because the first flute didn't have keys like this. It was just holes that you covered with your finger, right? The older flutes were like that. Okay. These flutes with open holes tend to be more advanced, like they're more advanced of an instrument, but also may have a slightly better tone, just depends on the brand. Some flutes will also come with little hole plugs that you can put in, and so you can gradually learn what it feels like to cover those holes. It does take more steady of technique and more accuracy to play an open hole flute. I have not taken that time to do that because I don't have an open hole flute. But yeah, it just depends. The further up you get on the instrument chain in terms of professional level instruments, the more you might see open hole flutes. So if you decide to go that far with it, go for it. It's not necessary if it's just your double. And that's my point in doing doubles, is you don't have to have the super high level quality of instrument if you don't want to. Get what you can afford that makes a good sound. If you can make a good sound and execute the passage, it doesn't matter what instrument you play. Does it feel good? Are you comfortable? Can you do all the things that you need to do to get paid? That's your instrument. There it is. Don't get lost in the gear game. Believe me, it's hard and it can be very expensive. Learning the upper range of the flute can be a little tricky. Like I said, work slowly, do those lip slurs. Use a flute method book. Rubank or band method book is going to help you out there. Since the flute embouchure is quite different from the saxophone, you may consider taking a few private lessons with a flute instructor to get you started. Highly recommended. You know, it really will help. I've done that. I've taken private lessons on flute and on clarinet when I was in college, just to get myself to a level where I felt comfortable that I can play these things out in public and do shows and whatnot. So I can cover part pretty well. There might be some tricky spots where I got to work on it a little bit, but usually I do just fine. All right, there's the flute. Now that does it for instrument demonstrations today. The two main ones, we're going to talk about a few more doubles before we go, but the two main ones that you really should get down are clarinet and flute. Look in a double, expand your instrument inventory, expand what kind of work you can be hired to do and play. Get the clarinet and flute going. You know, start with one. I recommend starting with clarinet first because it's going to be an easier transition for you if you're just a saxophone player, and then pick up the flute. That's what happened to me. I started on the clarinet, was my first double. Actually, it was alto clarinet, which I'm not even going to recommend at all. That is a useless instrument, in my opinion. You can quote me and everybody can get mad. That's fine. But the alto clarinet is just one of the most wretched instruments. It's just hard to keep in tune. It doesn't fit very well in most pieces or concert bands, but I was able to get my hands on one. The band director was like, here's an alto clarinet, practice on that. Like, okay. It was so awkward. I hated it. Oh, all right, let's move on. I get distracted easily. Soprano saxophone. All right. So soprano, even though not really considered a double per se, learning soprano can help you out on those rare occasions when one is needed for a recording session or a show or a gig or whatever. A big band example is the lead alto player. If you aspire to be a lead alto player, you're probably going to need to learn to play soprano too, because some of those, like I said, Mel Lewis, Thad Jones charts, they would write for soprano being the lead in a lot of those sax solos. So if you're playing in a big band in high school or college, you're probably going to run across having to play soprano saxophone at some point. Now you can use the schools or rent one or whatever. I bought one cheap when I got to college because I needed it. I was starting to play some lead alto. Yeah, you need soprano. I bought one for about $1,000 and I sold it back and bought a new one it retained its value pretty well. I was able to get about 800, 700 out of that old one. So anyway, I play soprano. Some people choose to specialize on soprano or make it their most used secondary instrument. Take Kenny G, for example. Kenny G is exclusively on the soprano sax. No matter what you think of him, we're not going to talk about that here. John Coltrane, another obvious example. He started experimenting with soprano and recording with soprano later with My Favorite Things. Right, that's a very famous recording, jazz recording. And also Wayne Shorter, and I'm only listing just a few. There's plenty of saxophone players out there that play soprano as their most used secondary. And it's typically tenor players, to be honest, because why? Because the soprano is in the same key as the tenor. It's pitched in the same key, B flat. So all the fingerings and all the note names are all the same. It's just a smaller instrument by an octave, right? Soprano is the same thing, like we just said, as the tenor saxophone, one octave higher. This makes it a fairly easy double to start if you're a tenor saxophone player. It's also easy for alto in that the embouchure is more firm, right? So I have my second point. The real trick with soprano is embouchure and pitch. These are the two things that you are going to deal with when you start with soprano. You go, why doesn't it sound good? You got to have a more firm embouchure with soprano. It's got to be more controlled, similar to clarinet. You can still have loose, jazz embouchure for bending things, but with soprano, if you do that too much, it's going to sound shrill and whiny and not good. Excuse me. The smaller mouthpiece of the soprano requires a much more firm and controlled embouchure than tenor does. Tenor, if you're going from tenor to soprano, you're going to have to firm up quite a bit and get used to it. But plenty of saxophone players have made that transition very well. So I've got confidence in you. You can do it. Work on achieving a desirable tone. I like to say desirable. Okay. Desirable tone with long tones, and use a tuner to work on your pitch. Pitchiness on the soprano is just always a problem, especially in the upper range. It can go very, very sharp. Even though you have to maintain a firm embouchure, you have to counteract that with voicing and dropping your jaw a little bit so that you can adjust the pitch and it still sound good. Okay. So those are the things you're going to want to do if you're starting to learn soprano. Again, soprano's kind of a specialized saxophone. It's not as widely played that I see in jazz world, in mainstream jazz a lot. It's more specialty for like, oh, I want it on a certain song, or, oh, I want this soprano part on a big band chart, or maybe for this little thing. There's a lot of them out there that do smooth jazz though. Soprano saxophone is a big smooth jazz instrument. So maybe you want to go that route. who knows? But either way, just know the differences in soprano, alto, and tenor there, which I'm sure you will find out easily. All right, let's move forward. Bass clarinet. Oh boy. Bass clarinet. Bass clarinet is a lesser used double, but it's often a double for the baritone sax chair. So if you're out there and you're playing some baritone sax and you plan on continuing to play baritone sax, let's say if you're going to college or out in the professional world, you're going to do some musicals and shows and you're a baritone sax player and, hey, can you play bari sax book? Yeah, sure. Well, guess what? Chances are you're going to run into bass clarinet. Hey, do you got a bass clarinet? Whoops. So there you go. Modern jazz ensemble arrangers will often include bass clarinet as a double in one of the saxophone parts. I ended up purchasing a bass clarinet. I didn't get it out. Of course I didn't. It's a crazy little instrument. I won't waste too much more time. Just because it's a less common double and you guys don't need to see me play that. We've already covered the basics of clarinet. If you get hired to play a musical or a show with a woodwind 4 part, okay, or if you are on baritone sax, bass clarinet is almost certainly going to be one of your doubles. So let's talk briefly about approaching the bass clarinet. If you've never played bass clarinet before, think about renting or purchasing a used one to learn on. I purchased a very basic student model bass clarinet. It's probably not that great, but it gets me by for like $500, and it was used. That's really affordable. Okay, it's really, really affordable. If you're in, let's say you're in like high school, or if you're a middle school band director and you see the potential of one of your students being able to play bass clarinet, give them that experience while they're at school, while they can have access to that instrument. And if you're a student, try out the bass clarinet while you have access to it in your school. Because once you get out of that access, it's going to be harder to find one. You're going to have to save up some money and purchase one, depending on the track that you want to pursue. Like I said, I use mine as a double. I don't play it as much, but I can play it. So if somebody says, hey, can you come play? I got, actually here, I'll name drop a little bit. I got hired when I was living in Cincinnati to play for Lou Rawls. If anybody knows who Lou Rawls was, he's passed away, unfortunately, but a very soulful, I think he comes from the Motown generation of singers, but look him up, Lou Rawls, Lourawls. He's known for singing Tobacco Road. It was another song he played. But anyway, if you look him up, you'll find some of those songs he sang. But I got to play with him in a band, and I played on the baritone sax chair, and some of his arrangements required bass clarinet. So I had to play some bass clarinet with Lou Rawls and some other bands I've played with that required bass clarinet while I played the baritone sax chair. The fingerings on the bass clarinet are the same as regular clarinet. However, there are no tone holes to cover, so that's good. Clarinet has holes in the instrument that you have to cover with your fingers. That's another trick for clarinet, but you guys shouldn't have too much problem with that. It's easily dealt with. But yeah, bass clarinet doesn't have any holes to cover with your fingers. They're all keys. So the fingerings are easier to handle. However, getting the right embouchure to produce a good tone is the most difficult thing about learning to play bass clarinet. The mouthpiece is much larger than a baritone sax, and it may take time to adjust. Okay, a baritone sax mouthpiece tends to be longer and larger, but the bass clarinet mouthpiece is wider and much more larger feeling of it in your mouth. And it takes it's a very finicky mouthpiece. It's easy to squeak and make weird chirping noises on. So it takes a while to adjust and figure out how much lip pressure do I have? How much jaw pressure do I need? how can I create a really good tone without overbiting and overblowing and squeaking up into the craziness of the range, okay? That's what I found is difficult about learning bass clarinet, but it can be done. Look at Chris Potter. Chris Potter, he's one of my favorites. I did a session on him with these Clearwater Jazz virtual jazz sessions. He plays everything, and he plays bass clarinet. It's ridiculous. Just if you can find some recordings of him playing bass clarinet, and if you want to know, I got them. I got all the recordings, so I can recommend a few. But man, sounds good. Or of course, you can go to Eric Dolphy. Eric Dolphy was an alto sax jazz alto saxophonist, known for playing very outside and in avant-garde fashion. He was a master on bass clarinet. Some very wild and crazy stuff going on there, but fun to check out. So check that out if you want to. Like I said, embouchure, placement, all that's the trickiest part about bass clarinet. I would work on that lower range first, because that's why people want bass clarinet. They don't want it for the high range. If they're writing for it, they want to play low, way low, like the baritone sax, but they don't want as harsh of a tone. They want that rich, deep, low bass clarinet sound. It's beautiful. And when you play it right, it just rattles you right in here. It's so much fun to play those low notes. So work on those low range, striving for a deep, dark, rich tone. Upper range can be really finicky and may take more time to master, but you can do it. It's very pitchy, a very awkward feeling of pressure when you blow into the mouthpiece. So just be aware of that. You can adjust to it with time and practice. All right, a couple of other instruments before we go. I'm almost done here. Piccolo. I don't play piccolo very much at all, but it could be a useful instrument to have if you're planning on playing in a lot of pit orchestras or musicals and shows. It often shows up in the woodwind one part for musicals and shows. Piccolo is not a necessary jazz saxophonist double. It's very rare. I have one because I've been kind of a collector of instruments. I mean, I just want to be able to do it, I'm not very good on piccolo. It's much harder. In my second point, much more difficult to play than flute, and requires a mastery of flute embouchure. Okay, you've got to have that embouchure down because the tone hole is much smaller. It's very tiny, and it takes a lot more control. I highly recommend learning to play flute before trying to play piccolo, so you can get the feel of what it's like to form the embouchure and make a sound. Please don't go straight to piccolo. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to want to throw it away, and you might pass out. So learn flute first, okay? All right, now to the final and very less doubling parts here. Double reed instruments. You might go, what? No, why? Yes, it's there. It's there. I'm not saying you have to do it. They're less common in the jazz world, but if you're doing musicals and shows and stuff on Broadway-ish or, that kind of stuff, even if you're doing it in the high school level, you might run into this. Oboe. Fingerings are similar to flute and saxophone, but with some minor adjustments. Learning to play the double reed and get a desirable tone is the biggest challenge because you have to use the double lip embouchure, and it's got to be controlled, and it's got to be super tight. There is a lot of back pressure when you blow into a double reed instrument, not like you play the flute or clarinet or saxophone. There's a lot of back pressure when you play trumpet too. This has more back pressure than playing trumpet. Okay, it's crazy. You have to time your breaths really, really well so that you don't hold in extra air and you get that old air feeling inside where you have to let it out. I highly recommend learning from a private lesson instructor on oboe if you want to choose to add oboe to your bag of tricks. It is not for the faint of heart, no pun intended, with fainting and back pressure. Anybody? Okay. But seriously, get some lessons if you can. I actually did try to do oboe on my own because I've taught a couple of oboe lessons and I borrowed one. I don't have the oboe anymore. I thought I was okay at teaching the lessons and getting the sound, but it's a lot of work. Oboe is a lot of work. So if you choose to go down that path of wanting to be an instrumentalist that does those shows for musicals and whatnot, think about the oboe. You know, think about getting your hands on one or checking it out, depending on what chair you want to play. It's mostly in like the woodwind 1 or 2 parts. The final one is the bassoon. Oh boy, the bassoon. One of the trickiest doubles to learn, but not impossible. This is one of the less common doubles and is usually played by a musician who is highly specialized in doubling, okay? A jazz musician or someone who does musicals and shows and whatnot. Often found in the Woodwind 4 books of musicals and shows. Tough deal here. Bassoon reads in bass clef. All the other doubles we've talked about read in treble clef. So yeah, you'd have to learn to read bass clef. So that's a challenge, but not impossible. The embouchure is similar to the oboe, but not as firm. So it's a double lip embouchure, larger reed. Making a sound should come fairly easy at first on the bassoon. It's the fingerings. The fingerings are the absolute worst. A complete nightmare. I'm not exaggerating. That's my opinion. I'm sure other people will say that too. If you find somebody that says, oh, bassoon is easy on the fingerings, well, I would like to meet them and have a conversation. There are extra thumb keys on both thumbs. You've got 2 or 3 up here and about 3 or 4 down here that you have to push in different combinations with this. It's like, it's insane. It's very strange fingering combinations that aren't found with other woodwind instruments. So if this is what you want to do with your life, best of luck. I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm being humorous, of course, but it's a tricky instrument. I did play it for a brief amount of time in high school, pressured by my high school band director to join the community orchestra. And I played it for about 2 weeks and I said, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. Please help me. I went back to, he said, well, will you play clarinet? I'm like, okay, sure. But yeah, so there it is. Again, that's a challenging path. You choose it, but just be aware if you are doing those types of things, you're going to run into bassoon at some point if you're playing musicals and shows and things of that nature. All right, some final thoughts here. When learning to play a secondary instrument, it's important to take your time, go slowly, and strive for a good sound. Good sound is the #1 thing that you want to get first. Try to get that good sound, get good tone production, and then work out all the fingerings. You've already had some experience on saxophone, I'm assuming, since we're talking about the perspective of coming from a saxophone player. I'm not going to worry about the fingerings. What we're worried about is getting a good sound and having that embouchure. So that's what you're going to want to focus on when you're learning your doubles. Be consistent in your practice with your secondary instrument. Being consistent in your practice with your secondary instrument will allow you to improve at a faster pace. I recommend daily practice of at least 30 to 45 minutes. A lot of us might find that time. Some of us might not. But getting there as consistently as possible is going to help you get to where you want to be and get to that gig ready level. So, be consistent. Learn your 12 major scales on your doubles as soon as possible. You should already have that on your primary instrument. Practice similar exercises that you practice on your primary instrument. Scales in thirds, scales in fourths, 16th notes, doing stuff around the cycle. Practice easy jazz heads like, autumn leaves or, stuff that if you're a jazz player and you want to get your doubles up, start learning some jazz standards on your doubles. It's going to engage your mind. You're going to learn them in different keys. You're going to learn them with different fingerings. It's going to expand what knowledge you already have, and you can apply that to your saxophone too, like learning stuff in different keys. There you go. We got different pitched instruments here. Got a flute in C, got a clarinet in B flat. So if you're an alto sax player, look at that. You're learning melodies in 3 different pitch areas. There you go. Creating versatility. Learn to play simple tunes by ear on your secondary instrument. This is fun to do. I do this with my young kids. Happy Birthday, Hot Cross Buns, Twinkle Twinkle, Jingle Bells. So the list goes on. Get a band book and start learning some of that stuff. You know, what's the one? Ode to Joy. Kids love Ode to Joy. They love that. Love it. It's all they want to play is Ode to Joy. Practice these little ones like Happy Birthday. Take Happy Birthday in 12 keys on your secondary instrument. Challenge accepted. All right. Pick up a music book with easy songs to learn. Go to your local music store. They've got these like piano, vocal, guitar books. It doesn't have to be for, woodwind. You can pick that if you want, or find an easy clarinet book or a flute book or whatever. Disney songs, pop songs, etc. Learning these can be super fun on your secondary instrument, can also help you develop good tone and good technique to start out with. It's a good place to start for building blocks. If you don't want to do that, you can go straight for the hard stuff if you want. But I like doing that. I think that's fun. It's easy to do and fairly inexpensive too. So that's it. That's all I've got. Happy doubling. If anybody's got any questions, there's my contact information. You can give me a call, shoot me an email. This whole presentation is I've saved as a PDF form, and it will be uploaded to the clearwaterjazz.com/education website. Hopefully in the next little bit, you just go and look at those past sessions for saxophone, and it should be there. I don't know what the turnaround is, maybe a week or so. Hopefully they will get that up there. But thanks, everybody, and I hope you got something out of that. And I turn it back over to you, sir.
In the words of Austin Vickrey, get your doubles up, saxophones. So many.
I bet you say that to everybody. And how many kids do that?
No, my goodness. Until you pull out one of those great Ellington pieces and it says clarinet or something else. And it's like, well, what do we do here? Learn
clarinet.
You're ready. You're gonna see it. I've had artists, friends that are artists, and they say, "Hey, when we go on and we play for these major shows, on these major networks, when you list all the instruments that you play, sometimes they get paid for every instrument that they do play."
Yes.
Although they may only play just the clarinet that time, but they put down saxophone, they put down all these other things, and they receive payment for all.
That's true. I've had that experience, and I did forget to mention that. The more instruments you play, sometimes the more money you make.
Wow. And these days, for musicians, that really counts big.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Austin Vickrey, it's been awesome today. You've shared so many great nuggets of wisdom today. I know I learned something. I am not technically a great woodwind player, but I know under your tutelage, I would be. So I'm going to go back in our archives, and guess what? You can do that too if you're listening to us. Just go over to clearwaterjazz.com/education and outreach. And guess what? You could get great content like this for free. That's right. FREE. I said free sessions just like this. Master educators, master musicians, just sharing great content. So share with other people the great things you hear. And if there's something you want to hear in the future, maybe there's a topic we haven't discussed and you say, hey, I would love to hear more of that. Or you might just want to say, hey, I want to hear more of Austin Vickrey. Well, we would like to hear from you. Our email is info@clearwaterjazz.com. And you know what? Also, it's been awesome having you here. I am your host, Michael Kernodle. And as we say, until next time we see everybody, keep it swinging. Have an awesome day. Bye-bye.